Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of our deep dive into Xero. This time's webinar, we're actually looking at Xero and one of our other partner softwares, Receipt Bank, because the two in hand are great for getting any purchases, expenses into Xero. So this we're going to cover in our Receipt Bank first. So some of this we've just got on the slides, which obviously we'll send out after the recording. And Frankie is here as well on the call. And,
hi.
And Frankie will kindly demo some of the functionality both within Xero and Receipt Bank. So the first bit we just wanted to cover is users and how to invite them. So down in the section, you can add a user and invite them with their name, email address and mobile number. And again, there's different access levels as there are in Xero. So a basic user can only edit their own items. And so they've got really restricted access. They can't say then publish something through into Xero. We'll cover it later on in the webinar about using Receipt Bank for expenses. So you could just invite your staff there just to upload their expenses. And an admin user has sort of full functionality and can change everything and also publish other people's items. And again, if you're one of our lovely clients, then we always connect your Xero and Receipt Bank for you. But again, in the integration section, there are other software options, but find Xero, click on that and click your organisation. And there's just a couple of little hints and tips. Again, check the VAT settings. So if you're VAT registered, you always want Receipt Bank to decide that because it extracts the VAT information and will push that through into Xero. Whereas if you're not VAT registered, your Xero will be set as no VAT. And so once that receipt goes through, although it may have extracted that VAT amount, it won't split it out in your chart of accounts or your profit and loss, etc. in your Xero account. And again, you want to, depends how you want your flow of data to come into Xero. You can set it to come into draft or already as pre-approved. So over to you, Frankie, and we'll have a look at some of the functionality in Receipt Bank.
Righty-ho. So hopefully you can see my screen here, and this is the inbox of our fake Receipt Bank account. Just note you can obviously use your the app on the phone as well as logging in on your computer like I am. So you can see that I've got 9 items in here, and some are ready and some aren't, and you can quite easily see on the left hand side here that says to review and then ones that are ready. So I'm just going to go through these and just pick up on some points. So this top one, to be fair, looks good to me, which is why it's got a lovely green button ready. But if I delve into it, what you can see is this has an invoice that's been emailed in. So just to quickly cover Receipt Bank, obviously you can use the app to take a photo. You can scan invoices and then upload them, or you can use a bespoke email address that you just forward emails that have an invoice in the body or an attachment, and it goes into Receipt Bank for processing. So this one has come through from James's inbox. And what Receipt Bank does is it basically extracts the data off the invoice. And the beauty of this and why we recommend it is it obviously removes any human error potential for dates, invoice numbers, but it picks up, it just replaces the need for manual entry. Why waste your life? So this one seems all fine to me. It's a receipt, it's picked up the date, and it's picked up the supplier. I'll be coming back to supplier rules in 1 second. And it's obviously picked up the amount of the invoice with no VAT. Because Receipt Bank starts to learn, and also because we start to teach it, it was already coded to category of advertising, marketing. And again, some rules I'm going to share in a minute, it's already said, hey, I know this has been paid. And I know that because it's picked up this payment method on the invoice here, American Express, and it's going to go to Xero as a purchase, and it's going to await, it's going to be marked as paid. So this one, perfectly lovely. I'm going to publish that. And then this little rule that I've turned on in the settings, it basically means that if you do shop with a new supplier, it will ping up and it will just make you think, A, did I actually use this new supplier? Is that legit? And B, do I have the bank details if I need to pay them? So it just makes you think about it. So I'm just going to cancel that and pop to the next invoice, because the next invoice isn't ready to publish. And you'll see that, and you can see it says why, validation error. And you can come down here and you see category. So we've obviously not shopped at Timpson before. It hasn't been told what we've bought from them, so we can just then choose the code. So I'm going to go with repairs and maintenance. What it then asks you is, do you want to apply this rule forever against Timpson, i.e. I'm always going to be repairs and maintenance, and if there's anything else in the inbox, do you want to also code that? So I'm going to say yes to both of those and apply. You can see that it says credit card on the receipt, but it doesn't know what credit card. So this payment method bit at the bottom doesn't fill in. But what you can see is it's looked at Xero and it's gone, hey, Xero's got a bank transaction for £10.50. Is this the receipt that matches it? So if that's the case, you can click autofill and it will mark it as paid into Xero. So I'm just going to go back to the inbox. There's a few things to consider. Is if you're, let's say you take a taxi and it's 30 quid and it's on one day, and then you get a return journey, 30 quid, same date. Just be wary that sometimes Receipt Bank might merge that transaction. That's because it thinks it's one transaction that you've sent 2 receipts for in error. Obviously, it's probably legit. You've gone 2 ways, therefore there's 2 receipts. So there's some things that you might want to look at just to double check if things have been merged incorrectly. Yes, so I'm going to jump into the nitty gritty of the rules behind the settings. So the first one is suppliers. So you can do this in several places. You can come here on the left and go to suppliers, or you can do it from within the receipt itself. And you'll see this button here. And what this is doing, it's basically let's teach Receipt Bank as much as possible so we can automate. So there's this option to auto publish. So let's say, and it's quite likely, that Facebook is always going to be marketing. We then have the tracking categories brought through from Xero. So from previous episodes, you'll remember that I've said that I've got different departments in different parts of the country. So it might be that I always use Facebook advertising for the east side, and I want that code, that invoice to go to that cost center so I can report on it. One thing I'm really keen to push is putting your due dates in here, so i.e. your supplier creditor terms. Obviously Facebook's instant payments, so you put no days after date of invoice. But if you're using Xero correctly and you want to run your creditors report, you want to know what your creditors' due dates are so that you pay them per their terms and not, and you don't risk falling out of agreement with them. So if this were a supplier that says 30 days, obviously, excuse me, Google's just turned on. So 30 days after invoice date, for instance. And then again, you'll see that Facebook is always going to be paid by American Express, and that's a payment method that I've set up. So you can set these rules, and that means that any time a Facebook invoice comes in, it will go straight into Receipt Bank, get processed, and go straight to Xero. So you don't have to look at it or touch it for data entry. Sorry, now the TV's just turned on. It's just never simple. So that's supplier rules. So it's really good thing to get set up from the off. The next thing I'm going to click on to here on the list is payment methods. So you'll see this American Express is here. So what you have to do is you put in the name, whatever it is that you want to call the card or the payment method, and then the reference is the last 4 digits of the card. So what that then means is Receipt Bank, when it looks at the receipt, if it's got the 4 digits, it will say, oh, this has been paid, and I know whose card has paid it. And or even better, I'll mark it as paid to the relevant bank account. So obviously we've got a company card here, but the American Express one I've created is actually like the director's own credit card, personal one. So therefore we want to make sure that that gets marked to their director's loan account and doesn't get lost and sits outstanding when it's been paid. So this is a really useful way to automate receipts so they don't go through as a waiting payment. And the other thing that you can do is the users that you create. So I've got Tom Smith as a user, for instance. Let's say he always uses the American Express. He doesn't do anything else. You can again default it so that any receipt submitted by Tom Smith is automatically marked as paid by the Amex. The other beautiful thing that I just want to touch on in the users is, let's say you buy lots of things in cash and some things obviously through the company bank account. You can actually create a user called cash. So therefore you can toggle between profiles on your Receipt Bank app and send receipts using the cash user. And again, therefore you can just have anything used on that cash user is marked as cash paid, and the receipts go through to Xero as paid to the cash account. So some really sort of just handy ways you don't have these receipts sat outstanding. If we go to tracking, which we've talked about in the past in terms of here's my sales consultants and also what part of the country my shops are in. Again, let's say Tom Smith down the bottom, he works in my East Side office, therefore any expenses that he submits I know need to be allocated to that office. And equally, any costs assigned, I need to put against his name so I can see what he's spending. So tracking is a really cool thing to do. You can use Receipt Bank for staff expenses. It's a really, really simple element to the software. It by means it has no approval levels. It doesn't have any restrictions on costs or anything. So it's just really easy to use. But if you want something more sophisticated, we look at products like Expensify, Zoho Expenses for your staff claims. But here we've got James Bond, so he's submitted a receipt, and because he's used his James Bond user, it knows that he needs to be reimbursed for this. So I'm just going to click into the expense claim, and what I've done is I've turned on effortless expenses, and what that means is every month it creates an expense report. James Bond can submit receipts if he has them, and then at the end of the month it closes that expense claim down, so nobody has to keep creating a new expense report. So again, here you can see he submitted 2 receipts, the doghouse and Facebook again. So if you obviously can see those won't publish because we don't have a category. And again, Receipt Bank will tell you why it's not been able to publish these. I'm going to go entertainment. So expense reports, really nice and easy to use. Obviously, once James's expense claim is done, you can then submit for approval. So then you'll choose whoever it is that needs to approve that. They'll get an email and they can come in and approve it if that's what you need from the flow. One other element that we like, but it's sort of not really talked about that much, is an element called Fetch. So you can see here, I've tried to connect my Trainline account. So if you've got any online accounts, so that could be utilities, mobile telephone accounts, I mean, literally there's tons that you can integrate with. You can just make Receipt Bank talk to it, and Receipt Bank will go and get those invoices for you. So you don't have to download them every month and remember to send them to Receipt Bank. Receipt Bank will just do it for you. So add connection in here, and you can go find the full list. You can search whatever it might be. So Vodafone, pick whichever one it is. Say you have to pick a user, and then you can just click connect. And what it will do is it will ask you at this point to put in your username and password, and it will go and get the invoices. So Receipt Bank, it's all about the setup. If you get those initial lists, which they're called here, all really, really nailed, then it means that the rest of the publishing and processing of invoicing is just easy. So we'll try to automate as much as possible. Save your time. So that's Receipt Bank. Have I missed anything, Rebecca, on this?
No, we can just have a quick recap on there. So we just covered briefly about what your inbox is telling you. So again, as Frankie said, Receipt Bank might start to merge some of your receipts, especially if they are same day, same amount. Sometimes it is a genuine upload of a duplication. If it's not, then just look out for those. And one of the ways is that you can filter your inbox. In the top right, you click on filter and click on any items that have got a note next to them, and that will then again flag what the error is. So again, if it says it's merged, you can then unmerge them. So again, some things may have a date missing, so just to look out for those. So again, like Frankie mentioned, taxi receipts, things like that, sometimes they don't always have a date on them. So Receipt Bank defaults to the upload date. So sometimes if that's not quite the correct date, that could lead to the cost going in the wrong month in your profit and loss. So again, have a look at those where something looks a bit odd. Unknown suppliers, again, not everything sometimes has the detail on there. Sainsbury's are one for going on both sides of a receipt. So again, if anything's unknown supplier, then just have a quick review of that to make sure it doesn't come through into Xero as an unknown supplier. We can correct that there. And anything that's not ready basically means, as Frankie showed us, that, you know, it hasn't got an expense category assigned, and just needs a little bit more attention. So we looked at some supplier settings there, again on the automation, because again, as much as we want to save time in Xero, we want to save time in Receipt Bank, and ultimately get to a point where things just as soon as you upload them go straight into Xero and have either been paid off to the correct place or definitely assigned to the right category in your profit and loss. So again, so you can set up your category rules there, default it. Telephone's always going to be telephone. That's a good one to sort of a quick, easy win on that one. Payment methods. So again, Frankie showed us how to link those up. So you can default those if you know that you always pay something by direct debit or it comes out of your credit card. Your tracking, as we looked at. And again, once you're really happy with that supplier that's set up in Receipt Bank, you can auto-publish it. So again, that just means that once the item is received in Receipt Bank, it kind of bypasses the system and goes straight into Xero. We briefly covered how to link the payments there, adding them in. So again, over time, Receipt Bank collects the data information on your cards. So have a review through the list and just try and match up those cards. If they're really old and you're like, you don't know which ones, you can, anything that you delete in there is not a problem. The next time something's uploaded, it starts to pull it through and that will give you a fresh list to review through there. And we had a brief look at employee expenses. Again, it's a great way to move from paper tracking of expenses or spreadsheets, anything like that. It's a good solution to give a bit more flexibility to your employees, but you know, they have to submit the receipt to get their payment. And again, it keeps things nice and smooth because in your supplier list, you will just see that, you know, Frankie owes me some money rather than it being like 26 different receipts uploaded. So it keeps it nice and simple for you. One thing we didn't sort of cover, but Receipt Bank can actually be linked as like Xero does to other softwares. So if you claim mileage, and again, if you're VAT registered, then have a look at a trip catcher account because that's a really good product. And what you can do is it creates expense reports in TripCatcher that you can then send through to Xero. So again, it will flow through all of the system there. And I know Frankie's going to touch on it a little bit later, but again, PO numbers. So if you are using something and you're already using a PO system, but you're already using Receipt Bank, you don't really have to use a completely different bit of software. It's again making all your systems talk to one another. So now we've had a look at Receipt Bank, we're going to jump into Xero. Back to you.
Right, so now we're in Xero. Ways to get to where your bills are, i.e. money you owe people. Firstly, on the dashboard, you can see this box here, bills you need to pay, and you can then hover over these and you can click through. So if I go to the 12 awaiting payment, let's see who I owe money to. So this then takes me to the bill section. The other way I can get here is going to business at the top and bills to pay. So these are the invoices that I owe. And let's say I like to do my payment run once a month at the end of the month. So obviously I would look at the due date, and this will be pulled through from Receipt Bank. So where I said I want to put my supplier rules up in, it's really key that you're putting the ones that the supplier gives you. So you're not necessarily paying them too early, or you're missing the payment date. So I obviously have missed a payment date, but I'm going to ignore those top ones, but I'm going to say, right, these ones down the bottom, I am really happy that these are all due for payment. So I'm going to tick the little boxes, and I'm going to go schedule payment, and I can say, right, pay them at the end of the month. I then might have to say to myself, actually, this invoice here, I want to pay just a little bit early because I'm already late. So perhaps I'm going to do that in a mid-month payment run. So this is really nice for just making sure that what is sat here is correct, and keeping on top of it. Where you might sort of be a bit confused is sometimes if you've got a receipt that's come through, so like the post office, if Receipt Bank hasn't been able to identify a payment method on that receipt, it will obviously come into here as outstanding. So one thing that you might do is you might want to just cast your eye down, and let's say, for instance, we know that Xero has been paid this invoice, and we click through to it. And I can just simply mark it paid at the bottom. So let's say I know that I'm paid that by cash. I'm going to put that, and then I'm going to put cash as the reference. So you can mark an invoice off paid individually if the payment method hasn't been set up in Receipt Bank. So these ones here, I've scheduled for the end of the month, and actually I'm going to quickly do a payment run now because I know that these 3 invoices are overdue. So what I'll do is I'll go click the invoices I'm wanting to pay, and I'll go batch payment. Click OK, and it takes me through to this screen where it says when you're going to pay them. So I'm going to say I'm going to pay them tomorrow. Obviously going to pay from the business bank account. Details can be whatever you want it to be. So supplier run. And what you can use Xero for is if you put the supplier bank details in the contact, that will populate in here, or I can type it in now. And the details is what would appear on their bank statement. So I might put my company name, for instance. So what I'm doing is, one, I'm marking the invoices as paid in Xero. So when the bank feed comes through, I can easily reconcile this total amount. But secondly, I can actually now download a file export that I can then upload into my bank account. So I can log into Barclays, and it will have depending what bank you are, you'll have an import payment button. And Xero creates that file that you can then upload. So again, you're not manually typing into your bank, which can sometimes lead to human error. Again, you might enter the wrong amount, you might pay the wrong person. It also means that all your supplier bank details are in Xero, and you've got one source of information. So just to touch on bank details in Xero, again, based on your user access, so when you're created as a user, you can say yes or no if someone can edit bank details. So obviously you don't want somebody being able to go in there and perhaps put their own bank details on a supplier. So it just reduces the risk of fraud. And if any bank details are changed in Xero on a supplier, people get notified. So Xero will send out an email notification to let you know that something's changed within Xero. So you can just be like, yeah, that's fine. I approve that. So that's really nice that you can just download these templates. But secondly, you might want to send a remittance to your suppliers to let them know what invoices you've paid. So I'm just going to click send remittance. Obviously, I need some email addresses in here. And again, ideally you want to put that in the contact. Once you've entered it here, it will then save it to the contact for you, so you don't need to go do it again. And on episode 1, we talked about different brands and themes and email templates. So you can have your own designed statement, remittance advice, and you can also change this email template as well. So you can nicely send out remittances to keep your suppliers up to date. One element we are going to touch on very quickly is purchase orders. So Rebecca mentioned Approval Max before. It's an amazing software that we use for our clients, and we usually use it when Final Clerk make supplier payments for our clients. So what Approval Max does, it says it in the name, it makes sure that an invoice has been approved. So it uses POs. And the reason I'm mentioning that is Xero has that functionality. It's just really limited in that there isn't approval levels, so anyone can approve it. And also there isn't any automation in terms of linking a PO with an invoice when it's received. But on the other hand, if you're new to purchase orders and you're thinking, yeah, I want some control in my business, I want to make sure what I'm paying is what's been ordered and we've received it, it's really nice. You can create a PO. You can then see when you're expecting goods, for instance, how much did you get quoted? And then when the invoice comes in, you can just do a check and go, yeah, all right, what I've been invoiced is what I was expecting. So that helps if it's just more than one person in the office. So it might be that Rebecca's ordered some stationery, but she's on holiday when it arrives. I have to pay the invoice and I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is what she wanted. I can look at this PO and go, yeah, it's fine. It's exactly as we expected. So POs is there, but talk to us if you think I need that in my life. And we can see whether Xero's basic functionality will work or whether Approval Max is a better fit. So next bit I'm just going to jump to is some reports. So as always, go to accounting and reports. I have got some favoritized here, and one of them is the age payable summary. So I've actually already opened up the detailed one, and you can set it as today or whatever date it is you want to view who you owe. And again, this is just a really nice way to be able to view all your suppliers. And perhaps share this report maybe with other team members and say, this is what we owe. Are we happy that we're paying these? Just to show you the beauty of Receipt Bank, again, is if I click into, no, it's not going to be here. It's because I haven't published an invoice. So let me just flick back to Receipt Bank, and I'm just going to quickly publish this. Yeah, that's fine. Proceed. Right, here's one I made earlier. So I'm just going to wait for that invoice to come through. Should have done this before. It can't be doing live testing like this. Very stressful.
Did you want me to, whilst we're waiting,
you do
I'll do a little bit of a recap of where we've got. So we were looking at how to view your bills once they come into Xero. So you can do it from the dashboard that gives you those draft bills, what's owing and anything that's overdue. And again, the tabs on the top there under the business tab is a really good way to just click in through there. Again, everything will be awaiting payment. So any that are awaiting payment tab, have a quick review, see if you need to pay something off as an individual item because it may have got missed from Receipt Bank. And again, then you can select your invoices and do a big batch payment so that you can have that data there to easily upload into your bank at a later date. So you export the batch file depending on how your online bank likes to receive that data. And again, you can send the remittances to your suppliers to know, let them know which invoices that you have chosen to pay on that particular pay run. Have a look at our previous webinars because we did cover in quite some detail contacts. So everybody in Xero is a contact, and then it will start to split it down between sales and suppliers once some information goes into it. But the actual face of the contact itself is the same whether it's sales or whether it's purchases. So again, you can like put the right email addresses in there and put those bank details into the contact. And we were just then about to have a look at the age payables report. So are we ready, Frankie, to jump over to you?
Absolutely ready. So let me share again. So now you can see, here's my Facebook invoice that's come through from Receipt Bank. So what I wanted to just show you was obviously another feature of Receipt Bank is the digital copy. So you can see a little document sign here with a 1 next to it, which means there's an attachment, a document on it. So if I now drill down into Facebook, Obviously, I can see the details of the way it's been coded, but equally, I can then view this little document and look at the invoice itself. So again, if we're trying to move away from paper, it means you don't have to go find a folder and locate the invoice and hunt it down. Everything will be within Xero, but also you've got that second copy in Receipt Bank as well. And HMRC accept this, obviously moving forward for any evidence that they might ask for. So that's all I wanted to show, was just how to view an invoice and see it as a document now. And that's kind of it really for bills. Nice and simple. Use the technology to automate as much as you can.
Lovely. So as we said, you can run your age payables report. So the detailed report will give you the full list there. And again, you might have noticed there was this little settings button on your report. Then you can even filter by VAT, etc. So you can add as much information into that report as you like. Viewing the invoices, so that report is quite interactive. So if you click on the invoice on the actual report itself, it will take you through there. And again, you can then see that attachment image to review that information. So from time to time, you may notice a duplication. If it is a genuine duplicate, then by all means you can click on that particular invoice and void it, because it could have slipped through Receipt Bank because it didn't capture the actual invoice reference correctly. So that is a general duplication, and you can void that. Any errors though, as we said before, go back to your actual supplier, raise that with them, you know, that you need a credit note or a reissued invoice, because that is your core data for your records. Again, you can pay off an individual invoice at the bottom of and pay it off to the relevant account. So that is our purchases deep dive. We've actually covered everything in one session. So that's brilliant. So we are going to jump into the bank on our next part of our journey. How to link your bank accounts, bank reconciliations and tricks again, how other payment providers flow into Xero, and exploring the new features of Xero. So we're just going to have to change the day by one day on the Wednesday the 26th, as we've got another webinar on the 27th, which you're more than welcome to come and join us. But thank you again, and we shall see you in a couple of weeks.